Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to those on the West Coast, and welcome to the Power of Our Story, Coffee and Conversation. Today we have with us Hector Delgado. Today's talk is going to be titled, "A Retired Navy SEAL Combats the Active Shooter Epidemic." And yes, Hector is a retired Navy SEAL. Hector served his country and he is serving his communities across the nation. Hector will also be sharing his story of the loss he experienced during his deployment that drove him to digging deep and overcoming. His motto is to always have a cause. Hector's topics of conversation today will include SEAL training and the service in the teams, transition to law enforcement as a U.S. Marshal in Homeland Security, transition again into being a civilian in the business world and what they are doing at his company at ASR. He also is passionate about his work with the Navy SEALs Museum and the Trident House Charities, which falls in line with his personal motto of always having a cause. Brief bio on Hector. He's a retired Navy SEAL, retired special agent in Homeland Security investigations. He's a board member for the National Navy UDT SEAL Museum and Memorial. He's president of ASR Alert Systems, director at ORBSAT. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm looking forward to hearing about it. And he's the director at Warrior Health Foundation. Hector is a school safety advocate in this part of his life and career. He's combating the active shooter and assailants across America. His company ASR was formed to save lives, plain and simply. As an active shooter incidents are over in 4 to 6 minutes, which is about the same time it takes for someone to run, hide, and then finally make a phone call to 911 under duress while possibly being injured. ASR now has the technology to cut down that time that it takes to notify first responders, along with every individual within the structure that is under attack. This technology can be applied at schools, universities, churches, airports, distribution centers, municipalities, and government complexes, theaters, corporate headquarters, and the list goes on for sure. If you're concerned for your safety, or if you are responsible for safety and security for your organizations, after today's conversation, please feel free to contact Hector and his ASR team. And with all of that, Hector, I say take it away, buddy.
All right. Well, thank you, David. And thank you all for joining in on the call. And Sarah, thanks for the invite. I appreciate this. And I also have, I feel like we're all connected, not only because of our service to the country and service to the community, but it is a horrible epidemic that's happening now on a weekly basis and it's a horrible epidemic affecting this nation. But, I draw from what I'm doing now from the training that I received in the Navy. When you hear the Navy SEALs and you hear a SEAL team, the SEALs might be the tip of the trident or the spear, but it is a team. We have a number of individuals that support us, that fly us places. And, so when we're working together, it's not just the SEALs, it is a team, and they are, family. So, again, my background started in 1987 by joining the Navy, went through BUDS Class 149, and ended up going over to SEAL Team 2, and served over at SEAL Team 2, deploying over to Europe, in Northern Europe, Africa. Was involved in just in training with our other special forces over there, Norwegians, the Brits, the French. And then I went over, after 5 years, went over to SEAL Team 4. I ended up doing 3 deployments over at SEAL Team 2. Let me back up. Went over in the Gulf War, rowed a ship, was part of, doing some operations in the Red Sea and stuff like that, BBSS, and then went over to SEAL Team 4 and deployed down to Panama in the early 90s. Had a great opportunity this past weekend to meet up with a bunch of folks that I worked with in Peru and in Colombia back in the early 90s. There was a program, it's unclassified now, called Snowcap, where DEA and Army Green Berets and Navy SEALs were in country. They were burning the labs and blowing up the runways and collecting individuals. So it was a great opportunity back in the day. It was great to see a lot of my old friends from that time frame. And then eventually I went into the reserves immediately. affiliated with the reserves around 1996 timeframe. Entered into the U.S. Marshal Service, where Bobby and I served together, and we was in our class, and then we went to New York together. He was in Eastern District, I was in Southern District. Was in New York, transferred to Miami as a marshal, and ended up in West Palm Beach. 9/11 struck, and I went over to Homeland Security Investigations, which is a legacy customs agency, and retired as a special agent a few years ago. Throughout the career, trained hundreds and hundreds of folks in several disciplines. But one of my focus areas was that active threat, active shooter. And I found that there was a gap of information that I would have liked to receive. And I know law enforcement, the folks in uniform, would have liked to receive. Then I started thinking about, what about those teachers, those employees, those victims under attack? And so what I did is we took some commercial off-the-shelf equipment. We began to professionalize, innovate, and grow. So put the resume aside. My daughter did not want to go to school on the anniversary of Stoneman Douglas. That inspires us, inspires my team. And that's what drove us to develop ASR. And this is where I'm at right now. So back to you, Dave, if you've got questions, and I can keep chatting.
Sorry, I couldn't find the mouse. Thank you for that introduction in your background, your history. One thing that we often talk about here is transitioning out of uniform, whether it be the military or as a first responder, into the civilian world, and how often those traditions go from sometimes expected based on retirement in terms of service and time of service. And sometimes they're unexpected, whether they would be from injury or burnout or other incidences that were out of our control. And you've had several of those transitions, seemingly most of them voluntary, with an opportunity to go on to the next chapter. And I was wondering if you could just talk about some of those transitions, how those affected you, and how you stayed resilient through that process. So, certainly so many times.
Absolutely. So I'll use some examples. You know, when we speak about transitions, there's actually two transitions. There's transition out of the military into civilian life, but then there's that transition of a deployment, right? Coming back, especially if it's a combat deployment or any deployment. Because why? We leave our family and things happen. There's the garbage disposal breaks or something breaks, and, you know, there's a lot of stress back at home, kids and so forth. So does the military do a good job, you know, preparing us when we're, you know, forward deployed, getting ready to come home? They try. But you know what? There's issues always. Why? Because you've got, especially in my community, you've got people doing God's work overseas. And then 2 weeks later, they're back home. And, you know, if they're married and mature a bit, they still have to take that time to reconnect with their family. You know, how do you discipline your child? Your wife's been taking out the garbage, you know, now you're back, you're taking over these duties and responsibilities. So it's a challenge. And, you know, and sometimes folks turn to different things to ease that pain, you know, alcohol and other things. And we try and stay ahead of it. And then, of course, you've got the youngsters who are not married, don't have a girlfriend, and now they're overseas. They are running at 100 miles an hour. Now they're back, and something happens, and they're drinking a beer at a bar. They snap. So we try and stay ahead of this, at least in my community, look at, you know, what are they doing overseas, how we can make that transition back to the United States easy. And then, of course, you've got transitions, you know, from the military and going into civilian world. You know, for whatever reason why you want to leave the military, or if you're retiring, you know, you have to be prepared. The military offers a lot of resources and everything from resume writing and so forth. But, you know, the transition, trying to use your skills that you've received and developed from the military and applying them in the civilian world could be a challenge as well. But for me, you know, it worked out great for the most part. I was always involved in something tactical, always involved in something operational in the special operations realm, whether it was in law enforcement. So, for example, in Miami, when I was a customs agent, Homeland Security Investigations, I was on their SRT team, taking a lot of what we did in the military that might apply in a law enforcement environment and transitioning that and helping to build my team. But going back to answer your question, transitioning is not only that individual. You really have to transition the whole family, because your lifestyle, your operational tempo, your schedule changes. But it's definitely something that you need to have support, family support. You need to have psychological support sometimes, and you got to have you really need to dig deep and use that family support, which is what I did to get you through certain things, especially if you're coming back off of a deployment or an operation which hits home, or where you've suffered loss. Back to you, David.
Appreciate that. That was a great response. Thank you for sharing that. I know, one of the things that you're super passionate about, other than your business and the services that you guys provide, and you do that with such passion, which is awesome. I want to get back into that in a minute. But first, I want to hear about your true life's passion, which is your causes, the memorial and the museum, and all the stuff you do surrounding the SEAL community. So would love you to talk some more about that.
Absolutely. So I'll tell everyone, I'm not a fan of the books and movies that are written. I'd rather my SEALs be quiet and get back to where we were. But look, the public wants to know, and I understand that. And there are a number of books out there that don't use the word I so much, but they speak about the team, and they're not disclosing tactics, techniques, or procedures. So those are books that I would, suggest. And when it comes to movies, look, I could say that there was a movie that is fairly accurate because I was there. It was my deployment, called American Sniper, and did we suffer some loss, in that deployment? Sure. But going back to the community and the cause, I took what I felt was to preserve the legacy of the Navy, of the UDT SEALs, and have been involved with the museum for over 20 years. And what has happened was the museum was a very small, and it still is a very small, unique museum. But after the raid to capture, kill bin Laden, we had a lot of more foot traffic. We had a lot of news and everything going down there. And of course, the SEALs have evolved with their leadership and admirals and so forth. So the limelight was there in books and movies. So we had to figure out, how can we grow the museum in a humble manner, but yet still, try and maintain that anonymity. But that's not going to happen. So what we ended up doing was, we now have a house, which is called the Trident House. So the museum sort of has legacy, memorial, and family support. The museum's there, so it's not only four walls. You have the Trident House, which we can bring down Gold Star families or SEALs that need some repair with their families. We can fly them down, put them in for a week, let them come in and just decompress. Gold Star families can come see their son or their family on the wall, touch their name on the memorial wall, which sits directly behind the museum. And that's the family support. So we are able to honor those who have fallen and gone before us through the memorial, preserve the legacy, and of course, provide support to the families and those who are in need, including active duty SEALs.
That's super special. I can completely relate to that, in reference to the Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., which kind of gives me that same place of humbleness and wholesomeness, where you can go and see the names on the wall and feel like you're there with that person. That sense of just solace and solemn to know that their spirit was on. So that amazing work you guys are doing there, and thank you for that. And let's tap into ASR a little bit. I want to hear a little bit more about that. And before we open it up to everybody else's questions, would love to understand that the different types of businesses that or institutions you guys have your systems installed in. And I know how awesome it is personally. I've been through your demo, and maybe we can even get a demo of that today if we have the time, which would be awesome. I see some of your other colleagues have signed on as well, and hopefully they're in the demo room. If you guys would be willing to do that. But I'd love to hear more about the business and how it's affected the communities and where you guys are installed.
Absolutely. We looked at the data, this first of all, it's a horrible epidemic. And we know that there's mental health issues. We know that there's not one solution to combat this epidemic. It's multiple, right? You have to evaluate the children. You have to evaluate the system, the school, how you harden the school, what type of technologies are integrated to respond when there's an incident and an attack, and how do we get that information to the emergency responders. So we found, again, like I said, we found that there was a little gap there because, forcing someone, whether you use run, hide, fight, Alice, avoid, deny, defend, whatever protocol an organization has, you still have to, survive. And what I mean by that is when there's a fire drill, get away from the building, it's on fire. And when an active shooter incident occurs, you have to survive. Am I leaving the building to get away from gunfire, or am I going to lock down? So you can't choreograph that. And we found that, forcing people to run, hide, whip out a phone, unlock a phone, look for an app that they never used before is probably not the best idea, but at least there's a resource. So what we ended up doing was looking at and building this, how a victim would respond. We built it how law enforcement would think as a Navy SEAL, and of course, as a bad person. So what we ended up doing was developing a system that allows you to put a wireless system, and it can be networked, a wireless system within an organization that has hard buttons, that has pendants that would communicate, and of course, an app, a one-dimensional app solely for active shooter. And what it does is when that button and when that system is initiated, it goes directly to that dispatcher. So it bypasses the complaint taker, it bypasses everyone. It goes directly to law enforcement on the street, and it goes directly to that dispatcher. And then it gives them what I call the 5 W's. It gives you the actual address, gives you the room, it gives you a map of exactly where that button was initiated. And that information is immediately received, and those dispatchers can start making an informed decision and getting law enforcement on scene, because those emergency responders could be around the corner. So, but they don't know something's going on until that phone call is made. And as we've seen in the past, people are hiding. They don't want to disclose themselves. They might be hiding in a closet. You want them to call on the phone. So we wanted to find a solution that covers all of that. And not only is this a law enforcement effort, but it's for those victims. We want to empower those teachers. We want to empower those employees to know that they have a system in place to use that as part of that training, because we all know active shooter training is now becoming mandatory in many, many verticals. And that's where we're at. So when we speak about verticals, we are currently installed in over 10 states. We're in schools, churches, synagogues, distribution warehouses like Coca-Cola bottling plants, Cisco Foods. We're in municipalities. Sometimes these city halls have emergencies. They may not be an active shooter, but they have emergencies. And someone has to call a PSAP or a dispatch that's 8 miles away to get a police officer who's going to run across the street. So those are, and we're also in hospitals. So what we started out as an active shooter point solution. We also have a few other notification systems like weather, medical, and so forth that have grown. But my focus has always been, and my passion was K through 12, because my daughter is a senior in high school and she did not want to go to school in the University of Stoneman Douglas, like I stated. So that is near and dear to me.
Awesome. You guys do such a great job with that, and I've always been so impressed with the systems that you guys are building. It really is incredible. Let's open it up to everybody that we have here on our panel. If anybody have any questions for Hector. Go ahead, Chris.
Hector, thank you for everything that you've done in all of your service, brother. It's truly humbling to hear all the things that you do and continue to serve. My question for you is a guy that's gone from such a high up-tempo life for most of your life, and then you've had the ability to transition so many times in so many different ways. It's my experience in talking with a lot of people that are transitioning from whatever they're doing, not necessarily just military, but something, when their time comes to an end, fulfillment seems to be a deal. How do you, you were completely fulfilled as you were an operator in this high up tempo environment and always being kinetic. In what way have you found that same fulfillment in another lane of life? that so many people seem to struggle with of not being fulfilled, maybe have an impact, but not necessarily being quite so fulfilled?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chris, because I know in the SEALs, especially if you're a peacetime SEAL, you know, you join with the goal and mindset to go to war, right? We train because that's the ultimate goal, and to be ready. And I can tell you from a SEAL perspective, as a Navy SEAL, you know, it's all about being at the right time in the right place. Why is that? Because, you know, I was a peacetime SEAL up until I got my first deployment, my first combat deployment in 2006. You know, to go over to Iraq with and work with Jocko and my guys at SEAL Team 3, and to experience both the highs and the lows that we experienced is just something that, you know, I can't explain, and doesn't even do it justice in that movie that I mentioned. But and at the same time, you know, coming out and working in law enforcement and being as part of an SRT team, and, you know, having multiple call outs and executing warrants, all of those things are what I had aspired to do and had the honor and privilege to do a number of times. Now, does someone like to get shot at? No, but the bottom line is, you know, that's what you sign up for. That's what you stick to. That's what you continue to train for. So for me, I've always been fulfilled. You know, I've always tried to do my best in each of those environments that I served in. And also, you know, it goes back to having that cause. So you're doing all these things, but you have to give back somehow. And whether it's to the law enforcement community, whether it's to the SEAL community, whether it's to cancer, you should always give back. And, you know, what I mean by that, again, is also I take time on a weekly basis to speak to youngsters who want to make a decision, who want to enter service. I sit on Senator Rubio's Naval Academy Selection Board. And through that, I'm able to track some of these youngsters that we've nominated and selected. So I've been lucky, but for those who haven't, you know, I would tell those who are looking for that, you know, it's chasing war. War is not glamorous. Chasing action, you know, for the wrong reason, it's not, you know, you just have to, you know, besides having cause, you have to have God in your heart. You know, you have to have family. I don't think I couldn't have done it without my family. So, in my extended family. So, and the people that I work with and ASR are tremendous. They are my family as well. So, I think everyone's different when it comes to fulfilling, you know, their dreams. But I think you always have to have a goal. Will be a dream, right? A dream will become that goal, and the goal will be acquired, and you can acquire it by habit and discipline. So, that's my position on that.
That's such a beautiful answer, man. Thank you for that and showing that vulnerability of that. And God bless you, and thank you very much.
You too, buddy. Stay safe.
Sarah.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing. I'm just amazed how just thank you for your service. Thank you for the way that you've been so proactive after your service. As a mother of 4 boys, hearing how well thought out ASR is fantastic. You left me also just you're constantly bringing up team. I had a Navy SEAL friend that once told me that if you get a team of SEALs together, there's nothing that we couldn't fix. And I feel like that's just what you've been doing through this beautiful, you know, heart behind the museum for the SEALs, the Legacy Memorial and Family Support. What a beautiful cause. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. I align with you, you know, God and family. I mean, that's the only reason why I'm here today too, is through faith. So Hector, thank you. I've really loved hearing your story.
No, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And again, you know, I'm always open to come back on or just to stay. I would like to stay in touch with everyone on this call. I also want to tell you that for those law enforcement folks, that whether you're a dispatcher or any part of that first responder community, these are folks that are, you know, as a military in SEALs, you know, our missions are planned out. We take our, you know, it's not like where these individuals have to make split decisions every day. So those folks that are wearing a uniform, whether they're in front of those consoles, taking those calls, or on the street like Chris, I believe it was Ryan, are, you know, those are our frontline folks. So I just want you to stay safe, stay healthy, and we could not do ASR without you. Just so you know, there is a partnership between what we're doing and you to protect the public. So you know, just stay the course and do not politicize anything, because because those children, they don't know any different. Okay, and we need to continue to do what we're doing to help those children.
That's such a strong point about not politicizing the work, and I really appreciate you saying that. It's something we certainly have talked about as a group periodically, and something that is such a factor in our business to deal with, and what we do shouldn't be political at all. So thank you for saying that. Anybody else have any questions for Hector? Yeah, Mark.
Hi, Hector. Sorry I joined late. We had quite a bit of a storm out here in New York. And I just sent you a connection request on LinkedIn. I actually attended the International Association of Emergency Managers conference several years ago when I was in my program for my master's in emergency services administration. And you know, I know that they had trade shows during. Have you ever heard of IAEM, International Association of Emergency Managers?
I have. Yep.
Okay. So my program developer is, you know, and as well as some of my professors who were linked into that organization. So if you ever wanted to reach out to me in terms of for ASR and, like, you know, just introducing you to some folks that may be able to let you know about a trade show there. I'm no longer in the organization. I mean, I still know people from there, and I connect with them on LinkedIn and for other reasons. But anyhow, just if I could ever be of assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to me for that or anything at all. I'm a retired Navy veteran as well.
Thank you all for serving. And no, I will take you up on that, because you know, our system and our technology is always evolving, but it's very straightforward, very seamless. And we took a lot from APCO. We took a lot from the EOCs, from individuals running those centers, and we continue to take input to continue to innovate. So, you know, stand by. We'll be reaching out to you for sure.
Amazing. Honestly, that's what this whole networking community is about. It's building your own personal network, having this tribe of people around you, and being able to make those connections to make the world a better place, one connection at a time. So that's awesome that you guys are able to connect in that way. Anybody else want to ask any questions or share anything?
David, I've got a question while folks want to,
Sure.
If they're thinking of anything else, and feel free, guys, if you ask me something that's outside the lane, I'll let you know. Don't worry. But David, so I really enjoyed coming on here. You know, I've had some discussions with Sarah, you know, on behalf of my team, that some of the folks who are on this call, you know, really like to share this. And if it's possible to share this recording to some other networks and organizations I'm involved with, would love to have the ability to do that. Is that possible?
100%. Sarah, do you want to speak to that?
So I will be sending you this recording, and when you give me the green light, then I'll publish it on my YouTube. But you will have the link always. So yeah, that's great. I wanted to ask you too, Hector, with all the things that you have been involved with, I mean, your job is the most intense job on the planet. I mean, it's always about life and death when you were on the teams. And what was the hardest moment for you? What was the hardest time for you? And how did you navigate your way out?
You know, I think when you think about, you know, my training, and you think about why they train you in that manner, and then you look at where you've been and how you've been tested in combat or in other scenarios as a SEAL. You know, most of us will say, well, the hardest thing for me was Hell Week. Why? Because it's 5 days, no sleep. Basically, the instructors are torturing you. And when I say torture, it's just, you know, harassment, right? And everything's an evolution, and everything's a race and a competition. So I think physically that would have been the most demanding. And I will say the whole 6 months was just one big constant challenge, right? But of course, your mind, it's all about the mind. You know, your mind will tell you, even after 3 days and your toenails are falling off and you're, you know, chafed and all, you're still hanging in there. But I think one of the hardest things that I would say is when you're overseas and you're overseas and you're engaged, right? And with the enemy, let's say, and you have people that you've captured, but the people that you've captured are suspected to be involved with deaths of U.S. service members. Doesn't matter who they are, Army, Air Force, they're Americans that have died. You know, having the ability and the maturity and the experience to get those ties on, get those handcuffs on, secure them, even though they are they're combatants, but to try and maintain your I won't call it human dignity, but to maintain your professionalism, even though you know they're responsible for those deaths. It's extremely difficult for individuals to do that at every age. So it's important, you know, and I think that was a struggle for me. It was a struggle for others. I was able to, because of my law enforcement background, maintain that discipline. But it happens. It happens sometimes for us in law enforcement. We're chasing people that are driving down the street on drugs, you know, kids all around. You get there. That's it. You know, cuffs are on. It stops. So those are things, you know, that in combat or in scenarios where you're dealing with the enemy or criminals, that could be very challenging and different. So I'm giving you one, you know, something that's physical from SEAL training, and I'm also giving you something a scenario that has happened where you really have to dig deep inside and stay as professional as you can, because as an American and as a SEAL and as a federal agent, you're held to a higher standard, and you have to maintain that standard.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's hard for like a civilian to even imagine what that's like. And did you ever have a tough time emotionally, like post-traumatic stress response from your service? Did you ever have to deal with that?
So when I came back from my deployment with SEAL Team 3, and I could probably speak for the bulk, you know, that was the highlight of my career. It was probably the lowest point as well. You know, we ended up losing the first SEAL that was killed in Iraq, Marshal. We ended up, you know, losing Mike Mansour, someone who, you know, jumped on a grenade. It wasn't someone who just, let me think about it, let me try and run away. No, he acted and jumped on a grenade. That's what we call brotherhood. That's a team, right? And then, of course, we lost Chris Kyle when we came back. We lost Ryan Jobe. So the task unit, Bruiser, the task unit, SEAL Team 3 in general, we had a lot of good wins over there, but we also had some losses. Coming back off that deployment, you know, yeah, you had to come back, and I was holding my daughter. She was 1.5 years, but my mind is somewhere else. And it takes time to go through that, you know, and that's where your family comes through, having understanding, having the relationship with the team and the ombudsman and the professionals that they supply to help us, whether it's a therapist, a priest, a reverend, whatever it may be, you know, seeking out that help to make sure that you and your wife can persevere the challenge. So there were some challenges, you know, there was some alcohol use, excessive, and you just have to be able to just, you know, dig deep, go back to your training, say, hey, enough. We need to just hit the reset button. So I think that happened to a lot of those guys, including myself, coming back. But, you know, you kind of hit the reset button and you start over again. So, and it happens again. It's happening now. You know, I listened to my nephew who came back from a deployment in one of the SEAL teams. Again, he's disconnected. Great family, but it's going to take a little while, you know. So it's just something, again, that we need to have. You need to be able to recognize it yourself. And folks in the command need to recognize it and have a system in place, a process in place to care for those people.
So it sounds like, just my last comment, it sounds like you had a willingness to reconnect. That's what I'm hearing from you that may differentiate you from possibly others, is that there was a willingness to get on that painful journey of reconnecting with the different people in your life. And it sounds like your family understood, which I'm sure is incredible.
Yes. Yeah. I would say you have to have the willingness. You have to be able to catch it, and that's more of a PTSD, the question, and that disease. But what about the traumatic brain injury? You've got stellar soldiers and SEALs and service members that start behaving differently. And well, just replace them, put them over here. Let's get someone else. No, they're behaving that way because there's a problem. How do we get ahead of that problem? Why do we scan people after they're dead? Like, look at the NFL. Why are we scanning their brains afterwards? Let's scan them before they deploy and afterwards. So there's a lot of work internally within the military that needs to be done to combat this TBI problem, and of course PTSD. So hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. That's awesome. The one thing that resonated with me is when you were talking about the willpower that it takes not to completely destroy someone that you have under arrest or capture because of what they've done to somebody else. And that's something that as police officers, we deal with, several times per day. And, your job in Homeland as well. And it's when everything is running at 100 miles an hour and it literally comes to a halt in a second. And you have to switch your mindset in that second to change everything. Otherwise, honestly, it's one of the reasons guys and officers lose their career 90% of the time is because they didn't flip that switch in that moment. And then they tune somebody up that's got handcuffs on and can't do that. But I love the way you put that. That was awesome. Chris Gregorio, go ahead.
Sorry. You kind of scathed over it, and a man like you with your background, the credibility that you bring, I was wondering if you could just hit one more time for emphasis for those that are going to watch this on the importance of, number one, recognizing it, but being okay to not hold everything in, to be able to go seek out that help, whether it's from a counselor or a priest or whoever for you, but to be open about it and to process that trauma and not just hide it away. We talk about that very often in here. And it takes the right person at the right time to say the right thing to the right person at the right moment to save their life. And all of us may say something, but you're a new face with a new credibility to some folks. To hear that individual, the courage to say, hey, I'm not weak because I'm asking for help. Thank you again.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. No, I think, look, guys, well, the older you get, the less you care about what people think of you, right? And what you say. But the truth of the matter is you got to be able to recognize it and fix it. That's just the truth of the matter. You got to get help if there's help that's warranted. And I think, a lot of, we live a very fast life in the SEAL teams. You live a very fast life in law enforcement. You're doing things, you're traveling, you're going from, 0 to 100 miles an hour, and you have to de-escalate scenarios and situations. So, and there's a lot. You look at the suicide rate in the military, you look at the suicide rate in law enforcement, you look at the lack of support that the country, gets behind. And when they politicize these movements, defunding the police, you look at Chris, he's out there, he's holding strong, but in that environment, he's got to deal with a lot more than another police officer may have to deal with in somewhere else. So I think, for those of you that, see this and may have gone through it or go through it, and you kind of go back and forth, it doesn't make you a lesser human being or a lesser man or woman to seek help. You have to, and confide in those that are going to, and put yourself in the right environment. I mean, that's what it comes down to. If you're going to put yourself in the wrong environment with bad habits and other, things that people are doing, then you're not going to grow. You're not going to grow professionally. You need to always seek self-help. We've got someone on the call here, Jerry, as a senior advisor in my company. He's always pushing us to learn more in the security industry and provide us the resources to grow in this industry. So again, you got to have the right environment and stay away from the wrong things. So that's just me.
Awesome. Go ahead, Mark.
Interestingly, Hector, I went through the Rodney King riots many, many years ago. And that experience was life altering and life changing for me. As a young kid, I walked down the street as buildings were burning, and, walked out of the house, saw it on the news, and just, saw something burning near my house and had to walk down the street, right? Wrong, not a good environment to be walking down during that time. And it's interesting because I believe that, certain police organizations, throughout time have discovered that, continually, that switch that gets turned on. I had to turn that switch on and off when I was in the military, but I'm not a police officer. And I applaud and thank you guys for what you do. But, getting out into the community and having those PIOs or just community service officers that get out there to represent the other side of the police department, the good side of the police department, because when I say the good side, I mean, there's the side that has to go out there, as David Berez is talking about, you rest and then you switch on and off, right? And it's, I think that continually getting out there and letting the community know that, police officers, have families, smile, like do the things that they're not allowed to do when they're in service, sometimes.
No, I get it. And you're 100% correct. And, does law enforcement need to take certain corrective actions in certain things? Absolutely. Have they screwed up? Yes. But to paint us all with one broad brush is incorrect. That's not fair. So is there room for improvement in certain cities, certain towns, and certain areas? Absolutely. But, one thing that I take pride in, especially with ASR, is we're able to put these systems in to different organizations, bring law enforcement in so they can see the installation, they can work with that organization. And now what does that do? That allows the school, that allows the organization to know that they know that they're aware of it. They know where the buttons are. They know the environment. They have copies of the system design. And you make law enforcement part of this response and part of the community, and that trust begins to build. So we take a lot of pride in how we're able to do that and bring law enforcement and the community back together. So it's been a very good, safe community initiative that we've begun in several cities.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Great question, Mark. Thanks, Hector, for responding with all that. And one of the things that I've taken on in my retirement is being part of that bridge that pulls the community and the police departments back together. Because I think communication is everything. And you've said that both in a physical aspect with the work that you do, and when you're connecting people in general, proper, good, positive communication means the world. And when you are building your systems at ASR and putting them into these private institutions, do you then, and I know you coordinate with the police departments for the response and the physical connections, the digital connections, but do you also then bring in the police departments to run through scenarios using that equipment inside the facilities where you're installing them, so that the individuals, whether they be in a school or in some other kind of public facility, can get a visual of the tactics that are involved. So when these incidents do occur, that they're not shocking and more of the trauma instead of more of the help.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are a number of clients who have, because the system's in place, take it to the next level where they offer their organization or their building open for SRT or SWAT training, or local police can come and just conduct some tactics. Not only they're getting an eye into the building, but they're also getting, that unit level or individual training. And just another thing, which I did not mention to everyone on the call, is, ASR, yes, we're talking about that panic button, that panic pendant, or that app, but our system integrates with existing camera, whether you have a video management system or access control, we can lock down doors. We can have camera call outs, scrolling boards. We have a number of integrations that we can conduct, whether it's a contact closure or an API. And now we're using all of the technology that a safety director has purchased, but doesn't really quite understand how can all of this speak together. So that's another benefit of ASR. It's not just a panic button that's going to law enforcement. It's a panic button that can be designed to lock down those doors, send other messages, and provide that situational awareness to the victims under attack and to law enforcement.
That's awesome. I think, through some of my experience with active shooter training throughout my career, I think one of the biggest helps was having that human connection to the digital technology in real time. And when we would do active shooter drills and having the folks that would technically be affected by an incident in their facility, and then connecting that to how the process works with the technology, how we end up there, I think that's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have any questions for Hector before we start to close out?
I just would love to just thank you again, Hector. I think I'm intrigued by your whole journey. I appreciate just everything that you have done. And it's exciting to see what you're doing with ASR also. So just a quick appreciation here.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, David. And thank you, team. Everyone on this call, you're not alone. We are one team, we're one family. And for those of us, who have served in the military, I think that you never want to be treated the way we treated our folks who came back from Vietnam. So when I look at all these organizations and charitable organizations, there's a lot of work when you volunteer. So I know the challenges it takes to be part of some type of organization. And like I've taught my daughter, she's got to have that cause, and she's developed it. It's not for Navy SEALs. It's something else she wants to do. But, train your children at a young age to give back. It's not all about the money. And it's something that, they take with them, becomes part of their ethos as they grow older, because the world is round and it will always come back. So I do appreciate the time. Thank you very much. I'm at your service. And again, I will talk offline if there's opportunities for ASR. This is not a sales pitch. I do want to help the communities and the organizations if there's opportunities there. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Hector. And on behalf of everybody, we appreciate your service, your time today as well, and all of the special things that you've talked about today. You're a special person, and thank you for all of your service, and thank you for continuing that service to help protect our kids and families across the country with your product. It's amazing. Anybody that's interested in ASR, I put the link into the chat, and I know Hector put a video, I believe, was in there as well. And
I have to tell you, David, it is cold here today. It's about 68 degrees. We had to open up the warming centers here in Florida. So, for those of you stuck in snow.
Come out to New York, Hector. We'll show you cold. I got 6 feet in my driveway. I just want to let you know, Hector and Michael Parker, I just liked something from both of your guys' websites or LinkedIn websites. Just hit a like on there. And so some of the people in my network will see that. And as I've gotten on LinkedIn, I've continued to draw some more people in from IAM and from that organization and from just the emergency management community. So I'm hoping that, one or two eyes, sales pitch or not, this is needed, Hector. So that's awesome, man.
Thank you, Mark. And we'll talk offline. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Hector, awesome. Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to talking with you more as well as offline, as we will put it here. And with that, I think we can say thank you to everyone for being with us today. And I hope everybody has a safe weekend for all of us here in the Northeast. Keep all four wheels on the ground and stop sliding around. It's going to be a messy weekend. So have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk soon.